This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.
What is happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast. We are in for a different show, and I'm extremely excited about it because what she is going to talk about is pretty awesome, and she is an amazing guest. Lauren Fonvielle is an integrative energy practitioner specializing in EFT, tapping for stress, anxiety, and trauma. She guides her clients on a journey of self-healing to break through obstacles, physical, mental, or emotional, that are keeping them stuck and holding them back in life or business. She believes we all have the answers within, and sometimes we just need a little help accessing them. Lauren, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited because, as I told you off air, I think of what we're going to talk about, but yet I don't personally know about it. So I guess what I'll start with is, so everybody knows what the heck EFT is. What does that stand for? And then maybe give us a little bit of your background, how you got into this.
Yeah, sure. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and it's really a process that helps you do just that. It helps you find freedom from your emotions. And when I describe what it is, I like to compare it to acupuncture, simply because people are more familiar with what acupuncture is. So when you go to an acupuncturist, they take those tiny little needles and they put them in at certain points all over your body. And the points that they're putting them in at are the end points of the meridians. The meridians are how energy moves through the body, right? And so similarly, we tap on these on some of these same points that if you were to go to an acupuncturist, they may put those needles in at. And when you're doing that, we're applying light pressure. So it's more acupressure as opposed to acupuncture. And the difference between the two is that with tapping, we also add in this component of speaking out loud and acknowledging the emotions that we're feeling, which helps us to move through them. And there's a lot of science behind why this works. There's been all sorts of studies that show that it works and the changes that it makes in the brain. And maybe we'll get into some of that today. But yeah, it's a process that helps you to feel better. And I really got into this because there was a time in my life where I was dealing with a lot of anxiety and stress. And I was feeling bad, and I was looking for different ways to make myself feel better. And I came across tapping, and I was very skeptical. So if you're hearing this and you're thinking that just sounds like some weird stuff, know that I thought the same thing when I was first introduced to it. But when I did it, I was at a point where it was like, well, I have nothing to lose. I mean, this is weird. It seems silly, but I'm going to try it because I feel so bad. Right. And that's a lot of the time when people come to me, it's like, I've tried all these other things to make myself feel better, to reduce the anxiety or the physical pain, and nothing's working. So I was kind of in that same place. And I did it for about 15 minutes in this group setting. And I was like, whoa, what's happening here? I feel different. And that was enough for me to continue to explore it and eventually go down the road of getting certified. And
I wonder why that is. I think Eastern practices, and I'm guessing this would be an Eastern practice. Is that a fair assessment? Or I don't know, maybe it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be considered that. Yeah.
I don't know why the resistance, but it exists, right, in the Western society, because we become so reliant perhaps on traditional medicine. But when it comes to, who cares whether it works or it doesn't, like the science even behind it, that's what, if it works, I'm all for it. So you said it actually makes shifts. And I don't mean to paraphrase what you said, but to our brain. And I'm really focused on that because mindset what I love to talk about, but talk to me about that. So this is an energy release. Are we dealing with hormones that are releasing to allow some of this anxiety to go away? What is kind of happening for this to take place?
Okay. So as we are tapping on these points, right, what's happening internally is that a message is being sent to the amygdala in the brain. And, the amygdala is the part of the brain that controls fight or flight. And I always like to remind people that that part of the brain is there to protect us, right? So it's there to help us when we're in a situation that we're in danger and we need to run or we need to fight back. However, in this day and age, when we're dealing with anxiety and stress and overwhelm, and that amygdala is firing off all the time, and you're feeling stressed out all the time, that is not healthy. So when we tap on these points, what's happening is a message is going to the amygdala saying, hey, you're actually not in fight or flight. You don't need to be freaking out right now. And it has been shown to reduce the amount of cortisol pumping through your body by up to 43%. And, cortisol is the stress hormone. So if something so simple as tapping on certain points and doing some deep breathing can help to reduce the cortisol in my body and make me feel better, I'm in, right? Like it's, you don't need anything special, just your little fingertips and the answers are there.
Well, it is so true because our brains weren't meant to really deal with all that we have coming at us in this day and age, right? You're right. We're overstimulated. 43%. That's wild.
Yes.
Now I'm definitely going to go get tapped and EFT. How did you go about it? I mean, you went to a course or you went to you said a group setting.
I was in a group coaching program, and the coach brought in a practitioner to teach us about it. And so then she invited us all to tap along with her. And before we started tapping, she asked us all to kind of tune into how we were feeling and give ourselves a rating on a scale of 1 to 10. How intense is the anxiety right now? And then we did the exercise with her. And basically what that consisted of is us following her, tapping on these certain points and repeating the phrases that she was saying as we tapped on each of these points. And then at the end of the session, she asked us all to tune back in and see where our anxiety levels were. And mine had gone down a lot. And I thought it was so weird. I was like, what just happened? Like, this is really weird. But to your point of what you were saying before, my mind was like, well, why did this work? This is so weird. Why is this working? And I was kind of getting caught up in understanding it instead of just accepting, hey, who cares? Like, this feels good and I'm just going to go with it. Luckily, I did continue to do that. And it is something that I like to remind my clients of too. It's like, if this works for you, sure, you can go and you can read all the studies and you can try to understand what's actually happening in the brain, but just like be happy that it's happening, right? Like be appreciative and gratitude for the moment that it works. Like, who cares?
Yeah, it is funny because I don't know how a car actually works, but I put my keys in and I drive. I don't know how a checking account works, but well, it's a bad example. Nobody writes check anymore, but I write a check and it works. Now you said something else that's fascinating. So you're being guided. Are you doing the tapping yourself as you're being taught?
Yes. Yeah. So I do this virtually with clients. So it's not like I am physically tapping on you. You tap on yourself. And so we would talk, right, about perhaps what was causing you anxiety or what was causing physical pain, because this is a practice that can help with a wide variety of conditions, from anxiety and limiting beliefs to physical pain, right? So we would talk about whatever the situation is at hand. And my job as a practitioner is to really reflect back to you the things that you're saying and kind of pull out what feels like to me the most intense parts. And then I would say that sentence, tapping on the point, you would repeat that sentence, tapping on that same point, and then we would move to the next point. And as we're doing that, a lot of the time what happens is our mind starts to think about things start to come up. And sometimes it makes sense, right? Sometimes it's like, let's say we're talking about anxiety about a project at work. So maybe the thought is something that your coworker said to you yesterday that really made you angry. And that's the thought that comes to mind. And then we can tap on how it made you angry or what that person said, right? But sometimes through this process, what happens is that a thought comes up that doesn't necessarily make sense. Maybe it's a thought about something that happened in childhood. And so then your logical mind is trying to say, that doesn't really make sense. That's not related to this. But I always encourage my clients to, well, share whatever's coming up, right? And let's explore that, because it's coming up for a reason. It's not coming up for you to ignore it. It's coming up for us to explore it. And, because a lot of times in our life, our life is made up of experiences, right? And our experiences are all layered on top of each other. And sometimes we are cognitively aware of the connections from one layer to the next, but a lot of the time we aren't aware. And so it's this process of kind of peeling back these layers to get to the root of what is really going on, or what is really causing the anxiety or contributing to the anxiety or the pain.
Well, it sounds like as you learn this technique, but your neuroscience knowledge sounds pretty substantial just based on some of the things you're putting in there, because you're talking about subconscious, you're talking about things coming up. And so do you study the brain in addition to doing this, or is this just a byproduct of what you've kind of learned? Because we're talking some serious changes that are happening, and you seem to easily talk about it, but my geeky brain is like, oh, cool. We're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't, really studied the brain per se, but I'm always reading the studies that come out about tapping. And I think it's just, I can totally geek out and talk about this energy stuff all day. And it interests me. So I definitely do my fair share of reading about it.
Well, it's very cool. Now, how many points are there? Is it 9? Am I correct in that? Or maybe there's far more. And this is, again, my limited knowledge was I thought there was 9 major points, but how many points can we tap?
Yes.
And talk to me about the mantra is what I wrote down. I don't know if that's accurate terminology, but talk to me about why that's so important as you do the tapping.
So, just in kind of comparing it to acupuncture again, when you go to an acupuncturist, if you've ever been, these points are all over your body that they put them in at. However, with tapping, the tapping protocol, we do what's called a round of tapping. And there are, I'm like, let me count real quick. I think there are nine main points. And if you want, we can kind of go through where they are on the body.
I think that would be awesome. And if we have time and you're willing, maybe we can do one. I would love to try.
Yeah, we could definitely. Yeah, absolutely. We could definitely do that. Okay, so the first point is on the pinky side of the hand. And I also have a PDF that I can send you that you could put in the show notes, so that if people want to visually see it by looking at the card that has the points on there. But the pinky side of the hand. So I'm using my right hand, my right 4 fingers, to tap on the pinky side of my left hand. Now, you could do this with the opposite. It doesn't matter. You could tap with your left hand on your right hand. Either way. There's no wrong way of tapping. I always like to say that. The next point is the top of the head, right in the center of the crown of the head. And I like to do it with an open palm. Sometimes I'll bring some people like to bring their fingertips together into a group there and do that. That's also an option. Next point is the start of the eyebrows. And then the next point is the side of the eyes. And then we go underneath the eyes. Under the nose, kind of like, so you can either bring like 2 fingers under, and it's right at that point at the 90-degree angle where the nose and the lip kind of come together. And so you can do it with 2 fingers right under the nose. That's how I prefer to do it. Or sometimes people will bring their index finger the long way, kind of like you're making a little mustache under your nose. Also an option. And then onto the chin crease. So that line kind of in between the bottom of the lip and the tip of the chin. And then the collarbone. So it's really, you have that center little divot area. You go down about 1 inch and over about 1.5 inches. So you're on the fleshy part underneath the collarbone. And then under the arm. So for women, it's the center of the bra strap. And for men, I guess that's probably like 2.5 inches maybe from the armpit. And then the last point is on the back of the hand between the pinky and the ring finger. And that's it. So that's the round of tapping. And I always tell people, like, notice which of those points you naturally tend to touch during the day. I think common ones are, if you're sitting, the example I like to give is like you're sitting at your desk, you're overwhelmed, you kind of bring your hands to the side of your eyes, like that temple area. And sometimes you'll even rub there, right? That's like a natural point. Or when you're thinking, sometimes people will like bring their fingers to under their nose or onto their chin and happen to like either just press there or be tapping on it. And so know if you naturally do that, and also pay attention if there's a certain point that you just gravitate to, you like the way that it feels for whatever reason. And know that tapping and breathing, even if that's all you do or all you take away from this conversation today, that can help to calm you in those moments of feeling really overwhelmed.
Well, I know stress management and anxiety is a part of what you're taking away. I mean, I even laughed and smiled doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, I mean, again,
yes, that's totally, that's part of the process. So there's certain clients that I'll have sessions with where literally what we'll do the whole time is laugh. We'll be tapping on the points and talking and laughing, and then there's other sessions where there's tears or there's lots of yawning. That's another common one. And all of that is normal. And it's just a sign that the energy is moving and releasing. And that's what we need, because I think what a lot of us do, and kind of what seems normal, right, is that we have these experiences and we have these emotions that are attached to these experiences, like anger, frustration, sadness, things that we don't enjoy feeling. And what do? We push that stuff down, and then we redirect our attention to something else that makes us feel better, which can help in the short term. But then all that stuff begins to build up, and then it's going to come out in some way, right? And sometimes that comes out physically, sometimes that comes out by just lashing out at somebody, it comes out in different ways. So we need to avoid that, tapping helps us because it allows us to really acknowledge how we're feeling, hold space for these emotions, and then move through them. And so it's a really helpful, powerful practice.
Well, again, even if you're just smiling, and I know there's more to it when you get into the mantra, you said a specific word, which is release. And this is one of the things I coach on all the time. You got to get that shit out. I mean, and again, I'll generalize. A lot of males were taught, oh no, we don't cry. Stuff that stuff way down, way down. And then it's going to be like a volcanic eruption, which is like the worst advice we could have ever been given, not to do these things, right? So I'm curious, as you've helped clients overcome anxiety, stress, what are some major, I don't know, if I'm listening, I really want to understand, like, man, I'm stressed about, I don't know, a childhood trauma. Can this really help? And how long and does it take? Is this individual? Does it release faster for some? And I know that's a pretty vague question I'm putting out there, but I'm just curious on some of the things you've seen when you're helping these people, because this is amazing. If they can overcome stress, anxiety, which I don't really understand because I don't experience it, but I know it's awful for people and it's literally debilitating for some. And if you can relieve that, that's amazing.
Yeah. No, I can give you some client examples of what we've worked through. But before I do that, I'll answer your question about how long it takes and how long it can last for. So and that's a common question. And the answer is it depends. It depends on the situation. It depends on how long you've been dealing with this issue. I think there's also, it depends on how ready you are for healing, because and this can be like a hard pill to swallow for some, right? Sometimes there is a reason why we are holding on to physical pain or the anxiety, and it's hard sometimes that can be hard to wrap your head around, but there's some sort of benefit to it, even though do you understand what I'm saying? Like it feels like, so the thought that comes to mind was a client that was dealing with physical pain in bed, not being able to, to do the things, live her day-to-day life. And when asked the question, what benefits are there for you to be in this pain? And then the answer was that she had her kids coming over to visit her a lot to check on her, right? So that was a benefit to being in this situation. So that's kind of an example of what I'm talking about. So you have to be willing to go there. You have to be willing to really feel your feelings in this process. And so your readiness is a component to how quickly things will move, and how long you've been dealing with it. So that's one thing, which isn't the best answer. It depends. But some client stories that come to mind. There was one client who came to me who had this who had white coat syndrome, right? Like every time she would go to the doctor, her blood pressure would go up. She had a lot of anxiety about going to the doctor because of trauma that she had earlier on in life. And this was something she really wanted to overcome, because there were things that she wanted to do. She wanted to have a baby. She didn't want to be stressed out every time she had to go to the doctor, that sort of thing. And within working with her within 8-week period of time, we were able to get it to a point where she was able to go to the doctor, not feel anxious about it. She used her tapping, before the appointment, in the parking lot, at the doctor's office, and in the office, and her blood pressure was normal, and she did not have the anxiety, and she had a really great experience, and it was a huge win for her. So that's one that comes to mind. Another client was dealing with physical pain in her shoulder, and she had through working together, she had this aha moment of realizing that the pain started when she left her husband, and there was some abuse that was going on, and that the feeling in the shoulder was related to that, and once that was acknowledged, it was released. So those are just some examples that came to mind.
Oh, I'm glad you gave them, because you brought something else up that I think, again, if I'm listening to this goes with you everywhere. We're talking about utilizing your own body to release this stuff, which is amazing. And that goes and lends to my next question, which is, how often do you do this? How can you do it too much? Is this a typical practice? For me, meditation is a everyday thing. So is this something that you're doing every single day? And I love that you said you take this everywhere, and right before an appointment, whatever area that you choose, utilize it. That is amazing, because anyone can do it at any time. I think that's pretty special.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's my favorite thing about it, is that, like, you don't need any special tools to do it. And even if you're in a place where you don't want to be tapping on your head in public, right? Like, you're starting to feel this anxiety, you can just apply gentle pressure to a point. And there are some additional points that aren't part of the protocol, but if you squeeze your at the bed of your nail on any of the fingers, if you squeeze there are also those the endpoints of meridians there. So you can just look like you're fidgeting with your fingers, and it's going to do that same thing. So I like to tell people that, because not everyone is going to be in a place where they can feel comfortable to be tapping and moving forward. What was the other question? Sorry.
Well, I was just curious how often you do it.
Oh, how often? Right. So, yeah. So I mean, I always will suggest doing it on a regular basis, because I think the more that we utilize something, the easier it is to use when you're in a situation where you are feeling overwhelmed or stressed out. And how you were talking about how you do your meditation every day. What I have found is, because people will come to me and say, I can't meditate, my monkey mind is so crazy, right? What I have found is that if you take some time to tap a little bit before you do your meditation, it really helps me, at least, to create some space. And it's like, it's that time for me to acknowledge all of those thoughts that I'm having in my head that are swirling around. And by saying them out loud, then it kind of lets them go so that I can sink into my meditation a little bit easier. So you can't do it too much. You can't do it wrong. And so as much as, as much as you can, as much as you feel comfortable doing, I would recommend doing it.
Yeah. And going back to your earlier point, any of us that are in the self-help, self-development, healing world, look, it sucks that some people don't want to heal yet, right? The self-sabotage thing is real. And if I could eradicate that, that would be amazing, because I know especially you have a tool that people could utilize right now, but because they want their kids to visit, because they want that empathy, because they want that sympathy, whatever it may be that they're utilizing, they're not willing to go there. I don't know. What have you found? Is there a way to push them to really get there? Or is it really a self-discovery type thing? Like, until you're really ready to, again, I'll say the word release and let that stuff go and really confront some of these nasty feelings that you have about that person, event, whatever thing that occurred. Until you're ready to do that, we really can't get past it. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it really is a self-discovery process, right? So like as a coach and as a mentor, we can often see things that the client can't, right? And so yeah, we want to kind of be like, hey, but this, but that's not effective unless they really feel that, right? And so what tapping really is really helping hold the space for the person to feel that, and asking questions that hopefully helps them get to that conclusion on their own. And sometimes that can really take some time. And sometimes it happens, and sometimes it really happens fast, but it really is like your own self-healing practice. Like I don't say like I'm a healer or anything like that. I am guiding you on your own journey of healing, and just allowing you to really feel the feelings, and say these things out loud, because a lot of the time we're thinking these thoughts in our head over and over and over again, and they can eat you alive. But then when you start to say them out loud, something can begin to shift. It can be like, oh wait, that felt really true a few minutes ago, but now that just seems silly. Like, like it seems silly that I felt that way. And so it can be helpful in that regard too.
There's no question. I remember taking our younger son to the doctor, and we were so concerned about something. And as we're in the parking lot about to go in to talk to this therapist, we start talking it out loud, and we're like, oh, this is really we're going to waste their time and ours. It's so funny. It's true. That look, release. That's the word I use all the time. You have to get it outside of your body, whether it's journaling, tapping, meditating, exercise, really doesn't matter. These are all techniques to use. I'm curious, because you said, before you discovered tapping, I think you use anxiety was something that you struggle with. This is the polar opposite of an anxious person I'm looking at right now. You are as calm as I've ever, you're just really, there's a calmness about you. So can you talk about that journey for you personally?
Yeah.
Self-discovery, because again, I'll call it almost Zen-like. Maybe it's the Buddha behind you. Maybe it's various, I'm guessing, gems or stones and everything.
Yes, all my crystals.
Yeah, for sure. So, but you're extremely calm. I can feel that even through the computer screen. So talk about your journey, because I think everybody would like to feel as calm as you do. And also, this is not you also encounter anxieties, life, shit happens, but you have techniques to overcome it.
Right. No, that's exactly it. There's tools in the toolbox now to be able to better handle it. Yeah. So I think, well, my anxiety was, I think I was always kind of an anxious kid. But it got to a tipping point for me when my husband got notified that he was going to have to go on deployment. And he had been active duty, and we'd done deployments before, but at this point he was a reservist, and it was unexpected. Like, it came out of the blue. The other deployments I had known about, I was preparing for. So, but this one kind of came out of left field. And at that point we had two young kids. And so when this news came in, it was just like an anxiety just washed over me, and the fear and the overwhelm and everything was just intense. And so I knew that I had to do something. Like, I had to do something for myself. My first thing was to go to the doctor, right? And I did go to the doctor, and her first thing was medication. And I didn't want to go down that route. Not that I'm against medication, because I'm not, but I wanted to try some other things first. So I ended up going to a yoga class, and I have practiced yoga on and off for years prior to this. And kind of reflecting back now, I can see, like, anytime I would start up going to yoga, it was always when stuff was going on in my life, right? So I found myself in this yoga class, and I saw a flyer for yoga teacher training, and something deep within me was like, yeah, you got to go do it. You got to do it. Even though logically, like logistically, trying to manage two kids, not having my husband here, we weren't close to family, like that was going to be something to figure out. It didn't matter. Like, something deep within was like, go do this. And it was the best decision that I ever could have made, because going through that program introduced me to a whole like slew of people who are just interested in energy work, right? I got introduced to sound healing and going to sound baths and Reiki, and I ended up becoming a Reiki practitioner, and I got really into my meditation practice, and then eventually was introduced to EFT. And so I credit all of those different modalities with helping me get through a really rough time. And it made such an impact on my life that it totally changed the direction of where I wanted to make my focus. And I never in a million years would have guessed that this is what I would be doing now, but I'm so grateful that I am.
That's cool. I mean, look, sometimes the path is never, it's not clear, right?
Yeah.
You didn't you're old, this is what I was going to do. And maybe you didn't know as a 28-year-old, who knows?
Right.
So my thought is, as you're talking, I think of my dad, kind of an old school, tough son of a bitch. Like he's just, good old Montana boy. He would be like, okay, come on, this is woo woo or whatever. But I love introducing these things. That's why I'm so excited to have you on the show, because I think so often there's things available to us if we just open our minds to it. If we just accept the fact that what you've been doing hasn't been working. It's led you to how you feel today. So to your point, as you went in, what do I have to lose? Is that kind of the approach you take, especially as I'm sure family members, people are like, look, this guy or gal doesn't believe a word you're about to say, help.
Yeah.
How do you kind of approach that? Because I just kind of throw my dad all the time into the fire of meditation or manifestation, law of attraction. This would be another one where I'm going to be like, all right, Pops, you and Lauren are going to hop on the phone. You're going to do some tapping. And he's going to be like, damn it, JM. But I'm just curious kind of how you approach that to get to at least be open to it.
Yeah. So I will tell people, this is not, because there's so much science that backs this up, this is not something that you have to believe in for it to work. However, it is something that you have to really focus on your feelings and allow yourself to feel the feelings in the moment. You need to tune in to your feelings as we go through the tapping process. So if you are not willing to do that, and what I mean by that is, like, if we are tapping on your anxiety, and but you're not actually allowing yourself to feel like how that anxiety feels in your body, and instead you're thinking about what you're having for dinner later, it's not going to work, right? So I'll say that. And then also, I think because there are a lot of these studies that have been done, and there's one that was done that they took a group of veterans who were experiencing PTSD, and they tapped with them for a period of time. I think it was 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And they, by the end of that period of time, 90% of the veterans in that group experienced a reduction in their PTSD symptoms. And 6 months later, they went back and checked in with them, and those symptoms were still reduced, so much so that some of them didn't even qualify to be diagnosed with PTSD anymore. So, I mean, that's pretty phenomenal. And I would just say, like, don't knock it till you try it, you know? And I will say, you know, different modalities work for different people, and it's about figuring out what works for you. And so if it works for you, amazing. And if it doesn't, don't let that discourage you from trying the next thing that piques your curiosity.
I think that's true. Words have never been spoken. Everybody comes to it differently. Like, again, meditation is so paramount to me, but that doesn't mean it's the same for my mom. She is the one that says, I can't meditate, and it's just not her thing, which is totally fine. So you mentioned studies, and I always go to books. Is there, if I wanted to go read about tapping or really dig in, where would you send people to? Whether you have maybe some stuff that you've written, or where can they find more about this, Lauren? Because I'm already like, all right, cool. I'm in. This will be something I'm doing. Where can our listeners go find some more information?
Yeah, well, I definitely have some stuff linked on my website, and then I would always recommend EFTI. That's the organization that I got certified through. So EFT International, they have information on there too. I know that Tapping Solutions put out a study too, and Dr. Peta Stapleton is she's the one who did the study for how the cortisol was reduced by up to 43%. That information can be found on her website too. But if you just start Googling, you know, EFT tapping studies, and even on, I think it's even on the government website too. There's information on there.
Got it. So let's say Lauren's going through her day. She just got a flat tire. A tax bill showed up that, shit, I didn't know that was coming. And my kids have been called into the principal's office. I am spiked with anxiety. Life has just happened. How do you approach it? And not that your way is going to work for everyone. I'm just curious. How do you say, okay, I am now feeling stressed, because no matter how practiced you are, life is going to happen. How do you go about dealing and combating that?
I would probably take a little beat for myself, go up to I have a little meditation station in my room, and I would just start tapping on the points and speak aloud all of the concerns that I'm having, and the fears that I'm having, and the anxiety that I'm feeling. You start with the most intense feeling, the thing that's bothering you the most, and then you slowly move towards those better feeling thoughts, right? So it's not like, because sometimes, because it's kind of the opposite of, you know, you have a thought, okay, you recognize that that's not a helpful thought, and then, okay, let's flip it and think about something positive, right? Like, that's not an easy practice to do. And so with tapping, what we do is we acknowledge this thought, we allow ourselves to feel it, and if as we're tapping, it's like, okay, even though the anxiety is still there, it feels a little bit better, we can kind of move towards that. It feels, even though it's still there, it feels a little bit better. But sometimes in a session, if you're dealing with some heavy stuff, you know, like if someone that you love, you just lost someone that you love, like you're not going to feel amazing right away, right? Like that's not going to happen. But what it is going to do, it's going to allow you to process these emotions that you're feeling. That's really what it does. And slowly you can move towards those better feeling thoughts in an authentic way that really makes sense to you. And that's the only way that it works. Like it can't be somebody else telling you, okay, let's repeat a mantra of life is good, I am grateful, right? Like that's not going to work. Like, and that's the thing with tapping, right? You can look, and I have videos on my website too, like tap along videos. So if there's a specific issue that you're having, that you can look for a tapping video on it, and that can be helpful, which is why I do it, why I make some of those videos. However, it's most effective when you're using your own words. And because what the practitioner is saying in a video might not totally resonate with what you are actually feeling. So I always encourage people to use their own words, and that can be difficult for someone in the beginning to, I get that a lot, like, I don't know what to say, right? And so that's why working with a practitioner to get started on the process can be helpful. But if you want to dive in on your own and do it, I do recommend, maybe taking what you learned from the video and then using your own words with it.
No, I like that. And you're right. Just saying, okay, that's a negative thought, making it positive. That's not easy for people. And I think people do resist that. So being able to say, screw my boss, fine. Like get that stuff out. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I want to give you just, open forum. If there's something I should have known to ask you about what you do, well, from the healing to EFT to tapping, anything you want to share with the audience as we kind of wrap up?
Yeah. I would just say my main message is that we all do have the answers within. I think we can spend a lot of time looking outside of ourselves, trying to find those answers, but learning how to quiet the mind, hold space for where we are in this moment and time, is what is going to really help you feel better. And that we really truly all deserve to feel good in our bodies, and don't give up, right? Like if you don't, just keep trying until you find the thing that works for you. And if this is something that you want to try, and you have questions about it, I'm happy to answer any and all questions. I'm just like, yeah, it's been great.
Awesome. And where can our listeners connect with you online, Lauren? You mentioned website, but where do we go?
Yeah. So my website is mindshiftwithlauren.com. And I do have a free masterclass on my website, which is mindshiftwithlauren.com/masterclass. And yeah, you can find all my social media stuff there too. Cool.
Well, again, I think everybody, if you're not watching, she's super chill.
Thanks.
But I think in this world of go, we have so many things to do. Again, why not? Why not give it a shot? Go check Lauren out and what she's doing. Lauren, I appreciate you sharing it. I can't wait to do some tapping myself.
Yeah, awesome.
Cover this whole different philosophy. I've never tried it, so I'm really excited to try it. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You guys, again, it's new, it's different. Maybe it's not new. Maybe this has been around forever and I just never discovered it. But I'm so glad she was able to share with us all the things, all the benefits it can have. We all have stresses. We all have anxieties. Give it a shot. Go check Lauren's website out. Check out the videos and give it a shot. What do you have to lose? So until next time, you guys, remember, your mindset matters. We'll talk to you then. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.